friends, I'm Rob. This is my gaming library. A couple of bookshelves, the collection of all of the books and a lot of the different bric-a-brac that I've collected over the years that make up what I have in my library and what I have access to run games for my friends. This, of course, can't encompass all the different PDFs and everything that I have, but, I do have my storage for miniatures. I do have stuff that's kind of loosely broken up into different games so that I can get the resources for any one game that I want to reference, possibly for a video, and ultimately for the games themselves. Now, we just finished up with Ghostbusters for my local group here. So I have to find a place for this and all of this. And as you can see, it's kind of tight. I want to put it here with all of my various box sets. As a matter of fact, that's not actually going to be too hard because there's a slot right there. But I do need to organize quite a bit, because when you pull things out and slap things right back in, unless you're that kind of neat freak that puts things back exactly where they belong and you have a definite concrete order, well, things can kind of go awry. Not the way that you would intend, and certainly not something that makes it easier to get back what you've been using before. So I thought while I was cleaning this up a little bit, I might make a little video about the different things that I'm looking at and having to deal with and figure out how I'm going to organize all of this. Now, the way that I've primarily got it organized is my Dungeons & Dragons, my very first role-playing game, is right up here. And actually, all the stuff on top should not be there. So that's all stuff that's been piled on. Probably don't have the best angle for it, but I've got stuff stacked on top of the books. It's kind of bad form, but you're kind of left with what you've got. And if I look at all the stuff that's up there, not all of that is Dungeons & Dragons. I've got stuff like the Savage World Fantasy Companion here, which I am going to be using sometime soon. I've got, let's see, my Eventually Dale and Beyond tome. I've got some Living Greyhawk journals from when I want to run Greyhawk, including the big city map from Greyhawk's Jewel of the Philoneus. I've got some of these really pretty awesome character sheets that I bought at a Gen Con once. They're beautifully illustrated. And actually, I should probably start using these, copy them and such. Some of the art is really, really good. But I should use these because now we're going to be playing basic Dungeons & Dragons for a little while, so... And yeah, the last thing that I did was in Greyhawk, so I've got all the Greyhawk books right there that I referred to from a campaign that ended over a year ago. So that needs to be cleaned up. Now, I generally have things from oldest to newest. I do not have any of the Wood Crane box OD&D. God, I wish. And if I did, it wouldn't be stuck on this bookshelf. It would be under wraps somewhere from the very first published role-playing game back in 1974 and 1975. Then eventually they switched to the white box. Again, I don't have that physically. I have it in PDF. But since I don't have a copy of Chainmail, I'd have a little bit of a difficult time playing it. I don't think I even have it on PDF. Which I can easily rectify, though. It's commonly available. But I do have Advanced Dungeons & Dragons here, which is timely because I do occasionally flirt with the idea of playing it or running it with my friends from Benchleydale. So I do have a number of the books, all the great orange-spined books. I don't know if I have all of them, but I got a pretty good selection with Monster Manual 2 and Unearthed Arcana, a couple copies of that actually, because sometimes you want to hand it out for people who like the different options there. Of course, Oriental Adventures, Greyhawk Adventures, Dragonlance Adventures, Manual of the Plains, fun stuff like that. Then second edition D&D, oh actually no, my basic Dungeons & Dragons, the Beck Me stuff. Somewhere I think I have the Holmes D&D, at least the player's stuff, but I have to find that. It's somewhere in all of this, I'm afraid, and that kind of scares me a little bit. I think I saw it at a half-price bookstore, got it, just kind of put it in the bookshelf before I organized it all. My friend, who sometimes loans us stuff for the campaigns, brought me these spell templates for Dungeons and Dragons, and since we do play a bit of 5th edition, those are pretty useful. And will be useful again. These have all the round blast templates for your bigger spells, up to things like Circle of Death, fireballs, cones of cold, things like that. And he's got one of these. These are from Arknight, and these are from their various spell effects line. He just cut them all out. So, they're pretty cool. They do take up a bit of space, though. I really have to find a new home for accessories like that and keep my bookshelves mostly for the books. I have my small little tactical battle mat. This is not the big one. This is the little one that I take with me to cons and local games. Small and portable. Still works just fine. Most encounters are generally not going to be in vast chambers or rooms, so as long as you're willing to erase and make more space, this works just fine for most things that I do away from here. I also have, oh dear, random things like this really cool map of... Oh, this was from... Oh, this is, if I remember right, this is the Hogwarts. Yeah, the world of Harry Potter, the Hogwarts castle and environs. This was something I think I got from Wish. It looks cool, but I don't know when I'm ever going to do anything with that. It's not really worthy of a frame. I don't know. We'll figure it out somewhere. Someday I might just post it up. These are the useful summary sheets from 3rd edition D&D. That's got to get tucked in somewhere. This is a map from something I got from RPG Crate. Eastgate, which is a dwarven brewery fortress. There's a whole adventure and things to it. That's all tucked in with my RPG Crate stuff that I've gotten. Now, I like to decorate with all this bric-a-brac and stuff, and I think a lot of people who have these kind of bookshelves do that. On top of this faded pirate flag from Rogue Galaxy. That's for color. Things like Halloween decorations for your Dracolich. He's so cute. He's cute. But for the most part, I like the organization of having the D&D in chronological order, earliest, and creeping along. Do I need all of these candles, like this castle, this wizard? Not really. They're cool for decorations, though, so, you know, that's why they stick around. I've got lots and lots of dragon statuettes, because most anybody knows me knows I love dragons, so I've got plenty of those. But when I have to redecorate, when I have to reorganize, I have to take all that stuff out, which is kind of a pain. But right now, all I'm doing is taking off all the extra bric-a-brac, so at least for now, that stuff can stay. My 2nd edition stuff, swing things over just a little bit. There we go. 2nd edition, yeah, you're going to have a little hard time seeing it. 2nd edition bleeds into 3rd edition. I don't have a ton of books for 2nd edition. I mostly had friends who had that stuff. So, for instance, most people who have a lot of 2nd edition stuff, most notoriously, they're going to have like the complete X class race kits and stuff. Those are really some of the defining things from 2nd edition. I have a handful of them for the things I cherish the most. I have the Priest's Handbook, the Psionics Handbook. I don't like Psionics, I never did, until 3rd edition made them a respectable class, but I floated this for somebody. The Humanoids book, it's okay. I've never liked playing monsters. And I have 2 Humanoids books? Why do I have 2 and I would rarely use them? I don't know. I have no answer to that. Well, I do. So, same number and everything. This one just a little fancier. But, yeah. So, I've got a couple of things I don't really even care all that much about. I If I had gotten the ones that I cared about, I would have had the Wizards first, but yeah, for one reason or another, I never got those. A few extra source books. Back then, that was really what first introduced the idea of splat books to me. Those complete books and their kits really did a number on any kind of balance that Dungeons & Dragons tried to have. Made some weaker classes, gave them some options to make them stronger, had some that really could get annoying, and if you had multi-classing, it could really confuse the lot. But, you know, for the most part, it was a game, and I played a lot of 2nd edition D&D, so I do have some things. My basic rules encyclopedias. Got a couple of those that'll be useful in a game coming up. This Monstrous Compendium binder was both a brilliant idea and a stupid idea. Brilliant idea in the idea of taking your monster entries, putting them on a single page so that you could take them out and take them with you. Horrible idea in not reinforcing the holes so that they would rip, tear regularly. The pages were weak and made on bad paper, so the Monstrous Manual they eventually came out with was far better. But I do have the Tome of Magic, and I do have the Player's Options, Skills and Powers, and Combat and Tactics books. What some people think broke 2nd edition, I got them just as an option, and also someday I'm going to be reviewing those. So, then it goes into 3rd edition. I got the 3rd edition books as they came out. So the first one I got was at Gen Con in 2000. When that released, which was cool. And I have a wide variety of 3rd edition books. Now, because I've been getting all of these books, I've actually put in an extra layer here, which I really don't want. I like to see all the books that I have, and I've stockpiled far too many right here. So I'm going to definitely work at getting these out of the way. For instance, well, this is from the Frost Maiden. Cool little map they got for people who bought it on launch week, which is cool. I've been collecting these Goodman Games recompilations of Into the Borderlands, The Isle of Dread, Lost City, which, they're fine. They're fine. I wouldn't pay full price. They charge a lot for these. And while they have a lot of information and a lot of good work in them, I just can't normally swing the price they usually charge. So scratch and dent sales have been pretty useful for gathering those at much more reasonable prices. And I'm sure that the folks at Goodman don't care because they've already gotten paid for them. So I've got a couple of 5th edition books that I do intend to run at some point in the near future, or we're looking at them for a video. Rapanathuk, fun times. One of the world's biggest mega dungeon / sprawling cityscapes. I've got weird ones like Zoran, The Secret of Zoran core game book. This is going to be in a video at some point too. I had an opportunity and picked it up for very little on the Facebook trades. So, but that's got to make some room. Got to get that out of here. Book on Torg they got from Half Price Books. I've got Beasts and Barbarian Savage Worlds. I've got Dragon Scales, the new game that is coming out from Jim Ward and Steve Lee. I've got a Dungeon Delve adventure. I've got a little bit of everything that's tucked in here. And this has got to be Adventures Dark and Deep, a curious volume of forgotten lore, their take on the Unearthed Arcana. I even got a couple of Pathfinder, the core rulebook, and the Game Mastery Guide so that I can be well-versed in talking about Pathfinder. I played plenty of 3rd edition and 3.5, played a bit of that, so I think that I can talk pretty well about Pathfinder, but there are some specific rules and things, so I got those in case I ever have to look them up. But yes, my 3rd edition stuff continues on down to here, and then we go into 4th edition. Yeah, I have some 4th edition stuff, and if you go, bah, yeah, there's actually some not too terrible stuff in there for pulling out for resources. The Neverwinter campaign setting actually kind of comes in handy in the Neverwinter video game because there's a lot of lore that translates there pretty well. The Adventurer's Vault for their magical items can give some inspiration on other magical items for other games. The fact you needed so many players' handbooks was a real knock against this set. And then you had player options like Heroes of Shadow, so that you could play a class as a vampire. 4th edition was kind of weird. Hall of Undermountain. So yeah, I collected a few of these things, none of them at really full price outside of the first books, because I thought, just like a lot of people did when they announced 4th edition, that was going to be the new Dungeons and Dragons. So, of course, I was interested in playing Dungeons & Dragons, and a lot of their promises sounded really cool. The virtual tabletop stuff sounded really cool, and most of that was just empty promises they never followed through on, which is unfortunate. It really kind of blackened their eye as far as what they offered. Fortunately, they won back almost all of that rancor with 5th edition. And then we go on to 5th edition, of course. Now, I'm not running a 5th edition game at the moment, so there are a couple of missing things in here, but for the most part, it's a fairly complete set. You saw a couple of them that trickled through, but generally I like to have a fairly complete set, and I found something fairly useful in most of the books from 5th edition so far. Either a different way to play with the Mythic Odyssey of Theros, or different world ideas and stuff. Sometimes just consolidating other books so that if I'm going to create a character, I don't have to have 5 books open. So Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, comes in handy. The adventure paths are pretty cool too, and make at least for good reading, even if I don't run them right now. Having them can be awfully handy. Paranoia, Citizen's Guide to Surviving Alpha Complex, I've got free RPG Day stuff strewn throughout here too. But after 5th edition D&D, we go into the World of Darkness, because I've collected a lot of World of Darkness stuff. Not all of it, not going to say I do, but, I've got enough to run just about any kind of game I really want to. I've got some Vampire, decent amount, going all the way up to their capstone Gehenna, which is the end of their storyline. It was their transition into the next edition. For Werewolf, I have a number of books. I really loved Werewolf. That's really the one that got me. Going all the way up to their Apocalypse storyline, which, again, I thought was really well done and let you tell the story about the end of the Guru. Those aren't going anywhere. Those are going to stay on that shelf up here. Honestly, moving all of that stuff for me is going to be rough. Then we get down to the ones that I don't have complete sets on and things like that. It's a little... So for here I've got the new edition of Paranoia and Acute Paranoia, which is something I definitely want to run. Now that I've got a group that I know can handle comedy games, I have very high hopes to run some Paranoia. I've always wanted to. Always was fascinated with the idea of Paranoia and never really got it off the ground. So we will work on that. Also, this was my first Paranoia. This was the 2nd edition. What I did was I took all of the DM stuff out of it, all the Game Master stuff, and I just left this as the player supplement so that they could just see the stuff that was for players. I know it was the spirit of the game to keep the Game Master stuff with it so that the players could hang themselves by looking at that kind of lore, but I didn't do it. Instead, I put the Game Master stuff in this 3-ring binder for my own reference. It seemed to work pretty well, too, especially when there's certain elements that you would refer to again and again. I don't think I have many modules. Send in the Clones is one of them, and this one would be basically what I consider the Benchley-Dale version of Paranoia, because it's so full of pop references and humor. It is hilarious. I've got bricks of character sheets for 2nd edition, all kinds of stuff. But again, this was a game I never really got a good chance of running, because every time I did, the guys who were running it really didn't understand a comedy game and were just interested in turning the guns on each other. Once they were told that was a possible thing, they just sprang to it with with all charge akimbo. I do have I do have Heroes Unlimited. I forgot I had this. Yeah, the core basic game for playing superheroes and heroes, which was one of the earlier point buy systems right out there with GURPS. Heroes was just about as universal as GURPS. GURPS just, I think, had a cleaner vision about what they meant by universal. GURPS is in its own little shrine, though, so... Well, I don't know about shrine, but as the game that I was least likely to run, it's got its own little section. And, of course, I've got different odds and ends. Again, the decoration got to be a little much. Oh, also over there I've got all the different spell cards for 5th edition. Those are handy. If somebody's playing a spellcaster, it takes a lot of the tension out of playing a spellcaster by putting all those cards at hand. I've got weird things like these Q-Fig Hulk that I got in a loot box back when I did that, before I figured out how much just junk is crammed in those. My Owlbear dice bag. And just all of this stuff that I need to... Oh, Munchkin Loot Letter. That's a Munchkin game. That should be over with them. Bags that I got dice in. Just cool stuff that, you know, maybe adds a little decoration. My wife gave me this paperweight, which is cool. A cool dragon cut glass. Neat. Never really used it as a paperweight, though. Some of the dangers of having odds and ends is that it collects all these random cards that I opened and explored on my Facebook site. Some Deadlands, World of Warcraft, yeah, odds and ends. Guardians. Those have a place. They don't need to stay there. Cool candles that I've acquired at various points. This was a project of the other game master in our group. Just weird things like this little reliquary coffin. It's size for a giant, so maybe I could use it for a giant sarcophagus, but it's creepy. I use this for decoration for Day of the Dead, which is not terribly far off now. Then we look at... I got some... the Fantasy Flight games for Warhammer 40k, Death Watch, Dark Heresy. Only War was borrowed, and if that player ever comes back, I'll give him his books back. But I had a fun adventure with those. I have a number of Dark Heresy books, a couple of Death Watch books. Just, you know, for lore. There's so much lore in those books. Fantasy Flight did a fantastic job in expanding the universe. I don't have half of the books that are available, and I kind of wish I did, because I'm fascinated with Warhammer 40k universe, but, you know, you can only get so much at a time, right? So, these are DM screens. One I think is for Rogue Trader. This one is for Death Watch. Now, the useful thing about these is if you get into... Yeah, this is Rogue Trader. This was actually given to me by a friend for use. But if you get into these games, the one critical failure that the Fantasy Flight games had, in my opinion as a consumer, was they did not have a unified rule set. They had different ways that each game approached leveling up abilities and stuff. Sure, if you look at just an eye blink glance, they look like they're the same statistics, abilities, traits, skills, etc. But the way that each one did things was a bit different. For instance, in Only War, you could train skills up to your base attribute plus 30, which was important because your attributes were never going to get all that high. You're a basic human. You could get quite good, and with your skills trained, you could get, again, very good. But realistically, you weren't going to be competing with a Space Marine in a similar situation. Those genetically modified super soldiers could absolutely blow you away in half of the things that a guardsman would care about. Guardsmen also had some unique opportunities for advancement. They could increase in anything. It just cost more. They had an interesting way of advancing that I think all of them probably should have used, but they didn't. Some of them you were just tied down to the improvements that you could make within your class, and that was it. You could not break outside of that, be it because of the hypno-indoctrination, be it because nobody's going to train a Devastator how to do diplomacy. you're there to shoot things. You don't get to learn those skills. So, kind of a weakness of that game, I thought. But, you know, it kind of also fit in a certain point of view, too. So, I don't know. It's kind of complicated. What else do we have? Oh, Fireborn. Role-playing game. Another one that I got off of Facebook. Never really got a chance to read it yet, but I was kind of despairing for having the group that would allow me to play or run it. And now that I've kind of got some prospects going, I'm excited about that. Fantasy Legend is a war game. Not my thing. I just kind of randomly got it at one point. I think it was in a bundle of stuff. It's just there to give rules for tabletop wargaming in a fantasy setting. Exalted. I got one chance to play Exalted, and I kind of fell in love with the world and the idea behind it. You're playing a reincarnated demigod who comes into a world that's been badly broken. What do? Do you try to fix it? Do you just try to have a great time? What is it? You have your choices. And you can have a group of these reincarnated heroes who could really kick some butt. But the odds are stacked against you because the world is badly broken. Ars Magica. My store was selling those for $5 a piece. Which is my only encounter with Ars Magica. I know it's an old game. The Art of Magic. I'm not sure which printing this is. It's a soft cover, but it's a huge book. This is the 3rd edition. And this is an interesting take on role-playing games. Not because the core mechanics are out there and unreachable. No, I mean, the way the game works is fine. The idea of making a whole clutch of people. Everybody makes a wizard, and you also make a bunch of other people who in other games would be NPCs, but you don't always play your wizard. You're a super powerful character because your wizard's an idiot. They're really good at magic, but they have to have an entire household that takes care of them because they can barely dress themselves. They are so focused on their magic that they need all these other staff members to do the basic stuff, including bodyguards to keep them alive sometimes. So it's kind of cool that you can slip into all of these other characters. Again, not going to work in every group, but who knows? Maybe we'll take a shot at this one too and see how that one works. But that's on the far horizon. It's more for the fun of reading. And why do I have two? I bought somebody's set out and they had their own copy. They bought it at the same time I did. Earth Dawn, 2nd edition. Earth Dawn and I have a very short history. Nothing really to talk about there. Numenera. I backed the Kickstarter. I believed in Monty Cook. On first blush, I didn't care for the game. I thought the world was fantastic. The game mechanics I didn't care for. The fact that DM never rolls dice kind of bothered me. The idea that a lot of things, to succeed at tough things, you have to really wear yourself down. I've heard of other games now that have that mechanic, but at the time it's just like, that's kind of galling. Doesn't fate and chance have anything to do with it? And relatively little compared to a lot of other games. But I will be giving this another chance. That's one of my resolutions this year, is to give a game that I didn't care for a chance. Numenera is that game for this year, so I will be running it. I did run it at a con, the Monty Cook Games. When I told them that I get back to Kickstarter and I was going to run it, they sent me a module. So I got to run that. That's where I really learned I didn't care for that system very much. But I am willing to give it another shot, so... Twilight 2000. This is the 1st edition, got the PDF, so printed this out. I don't like working from photocopied PDFs, but you know what? It's a fine game. I don't know what I would run if I had a chance. The new one's actually kind of cool. I've seen the alpha rules for it, but with my little group, I think I will run them in one of them. I think, though, I'll probably use the 2.3 edition. I've been told by people who even worked on the game themselves that it was the best. So, and down here I do have these other ones. I have the 2.2 edition. I have 2.2, and I have the 2nd edition box set down here. So I've got most of it. I just didn't back the Kickstarter for the newest one, which looks like a very, very streamlined, comfortable version to run. This is another one that I got from Facebook, the Master Books combination of Indiana Jones and Blood Shadows. that West End Games came out with. It's a very nice collection. Basically, it feels like you've got the two books in one cover, and they share a lot in their rules, so it's pretty cool. Again, one of those things that I do hope to run at some point in the near future. Anybody who knows me knows I love stuff. So when I backed the Planet Mercenary role-playing game, it came with dice, it came with anodized aluminum tokens. I love kit like that. So yeah, that's also on my list of games to play this year. I think that one will be fun. It's a comedy game where you're taking over a team of space mercenaries, and it's comedy, so fun stuff. So here's where I'm going to get a little bit of room, being able to condense a few things and scoot a few things around. My copy of In Nomine, a game that I fell in love with when I was in college, got a hold of it and realized I'll probably never be able to play it. Part of it is mostly my own deep-seated roots. I was raised Catholic, and there were a few things about D&D that always had a problem with some Catholics. I didn't have those problems. But when you're actually playing angels and demons, it feels just a little bit blasphemous. I don't know. I still kind of like to run it at some point, though. So I have it. These. This is the section that I don't get to too often, so some of these things might actually be mysteries to me. A lot of these were things that the second edition Pathfinder playtest. I looked through it. It looked okay. I can definitely see where it had a lot of leanings from 5th edition, Dungeons and Dragons. It didn't look terrible, just didn't look like a game that I was all that interested in, because it just kind of looked a little too formulaic, like you'd always keep doing the same thing over and over again. There's a best way and a clear best way you're going to channel your character into, and it seems like you'd resolve most of your problems by using that again and again. Robot Warriors from Hero Games. Another one from Half Price Books. Fort Bevitz. This is a Legentia book. And I also have Legentia #1 campaign book. So, Scully's Harbor. Legentia was always kind of a weird thing to me. It's from Task Force Games, who was working around with Flying Buffalo and some of their stuff. And it's got its own unique art style. I don't know how much that's ever going to inspire me to run any of this stuff in a game, but I have it mostly for the collecting of it. Champions New Millennium. Pick this up. Champions always, again, another one of those like Hero that kind of interested me as far as the superhero angle went. But honestly, after I talked to Jeff D and he sold me on his Mighty Protectors game, which I'm currently running, it was a pretty easy sell from these complicated, crunchy point-buy systems. That being said, some of the dissatisfaction that I have with Mighty Protectors in terms of some of the balancing might not have been the case with these. I don't know, but all I know is that Mighty Protectors is quite easy to run. So with the superhero game, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And then there's my Planet Mercenary book and the DM screen for that. So I got to keep those with the material that I've got. They also had a deck of cards, which is useful for, spinning the story out. So those have got to stay there. Hackmaster 4th edition Player's Handbook. I actually got that so I could play Hackmaster at a convention with the people who helped to make it. And then one bad thing happened and they had to cancel the game, so I never got to play it. Dumb. Sad for me. Very sad. Fairy Meat Miniatures game. Take fairies and make them debased and cannibalistic, and there you go. It was weird. I never really got into a lot of tabletop miniatures wargaming, though, and that's really what it was. It came from the Late Show and the second book, which is some scripts for different movies. Love this game. Definitely going to be running it. This has got to get bumped up on my list, so closer to the top of my selection of games. Whereas Fairy Meat can stay down there. Rulebook for IFGS. This is LARPing. International Fantasy Gaming System. Explains how to LARP, which I was enchanted with and would still love to do if I just had the time and access. The access is really the hard thing. If there was a chapter in Fond du Lac, I would be doing it. DreamPod 9's Silhouette. Core Command. Got those. Again, those came off of a... oh, and I also have their Armory. These came off of Half Price Books. And with the Player's Handbook, the core rules for Silhouette, and the Armory book, I think I could run a pretty good hard sci-fi game, which I've been told this is. So this is kind of my replacement for Traveler. I would like to run Traveler at some point too, but never been able to find those books at a reasonable price. And the one time I had to get the most modern version, it would have wiped out my entire budget for the con I was at, so I didn't. Despite the fact I could have gotten them from Mark Miller, the creator himself. He looked so sad in his own booth and nobody was really paying him any attention. It's like, this is one of the pioneers of science fiction role-playing games and nobody's showing him any love. I'm sure he still sold out pretty well, though. Gary Gygax's Dangerous Journeys, the game system he ran off, went to GDW after the whole thing with TSR, and he said, I want to make my game. I don't care for these rules very much. I've looked through them. It's okay, but I put that down with Ars Magica on the level of games that I'm really all that interested in running. Just a lot of crunch and a lot of things where he's like, well, you know, we can't call it mana, and we can't, you know, we want to be our own stuff, so magic is called Hika, and it was okay. But, yeah. Swords and Wizardry, I've got the Core Swords book, Swords and Wizardry Light, and they were nice enough. The folks generally are at Frog God, I found. They have the Swords and Wizardry Legion for people who are kind of trying to, hi kitty, who are trying to basically be the front edge and play the games in public for people. And I really kind of enjoyed it. They have the character sheets, which are very lightweight. I like this. This is very nice. The system is almost too simplistic, but they really did a good job of giving you everything that you need to start with. So I've got templates for the various classes, so I could just slap this in front of somebody and say, here you go. This is everything that you need to start out with. And it even came with this little fold-out with a Tome of Horrors primer. And yet another copy of Swords and Wizardry Light. So I think this one I got autographed by the creator, who was my friend, Eric Tenkar Stina. Must be the other one. I got him to sign one of them. So yes, I do like these guys. I really do. I think Frog God are good folks. And I'm more than happy to run their games because it's good old school gaming. And I've had fun with it in the past. I have a copy of Continual Light around here somewhere. I've got to marry that up with these so I can keep all my stuff together, but yeah. That probably should go up by the Dungeons & Dragons stuff, I would think, though. All that old school stuff is kind of tied in there. Another of my regrets, this is another system that I really kind of liked but didn't get as much into. Legend of the Five Rings. I love the world, and I like what John Wick did with creating this whole world, and even his system for the first edition book here that I have is not bad. It's runnable, definitely. Although I have heard that later editions were even easier to run, and that can be pretty important. There's Continual Light right here, which is, again, just a soft cover, but, again, this is useful for getting your characters up to 10th level. Oh, another copy of Swords and Wizardry Light. Is this the one I got autographed? No. How many copies of this do I have? Enough that I'm able to run the games, so I'm not complaining. And thank you, Eric, if you ever see this video. You've been very good to me to allow me to run your game. Basic rules for Star Frontier. This is all I have of that. I was kind of wanting to run Star Frontiers, but I know there's a lot of other material out there, and I don't know. it's classic TSR stuff. The earliest stuff was a little rough. And honestly, I'm surprised they never really branched out and made further editions when they were coming out with second edition to keep going on that line. But they really did tie in tightly with their stuff. Somebody loaned me this. They can have this back. Not really into the tabletop game, but it's good reading. All these books were so good for reading for extra material. And the Grey Knights are one of those groups that they don't really talk about much unless you get into these codexes. Whole human-occupied landfill. I got this on a whim. Most of these Black Dog things they try to be so edgy and almost to the point of self-mockery. I don't really have a use for it, nor do I ever really see myself running it. But who knows? I can't rule anything out these days. Nor am I going to try. I might find love for it someday and actually be able to do something with it. So, it's still a part of my collection. This was my John Carter of Mars collection. Apparently there was a Kickstarter that Modifius did. And somebody sold off their Kickstarter and I got it. Most of the stuff was sealed, but these tile sets for Airships of Barsoom are cool and not just usable for John Carter of Mars, which has made me happy. The Ruins of Korad tile set came with it. I got a couple sets of dice that are themed towards the races of Mars, basically. I have the narrator's toolkit came with it, a robust DM screen, very robust. And then the books came in a slipcover too, so lots of materials for this game. When I ever get around to running it, I've got everything I need to run this game. And I think a lot of my friends aren't really exposed to John Carter of Mars, which means that I get to introduce them to a whole new franchise and new characters and new ideas. For example, it's kind of weird that in a land that has, 8-foot tall 4-armed creatures, humans are the strongest ones in the game. Just because they're used to different gravity. Humans can leap incredible amounts. They can kill people with a single punch. Different. Kind of takes the genre and turns it on its ear a little bit. I think it's kind of cool. So, yeah. Where did I put... There it is. Swords and Wizardry. Okay, so all my Swords and Wizardry stuff is together. See, we're organizing. Kung Fu Hamster. Some of these toys and things that I collect are just almost to the point of getting to be too much. Fantasy coins. I love them. I've collected them. And it's cool to just kind of open up something like this. It's like, ooh, shiny. Cool coins and rosettes and props and stuff like this. Props are just fun. Even if it's just a bunch of plastic gems that you can throw out. Oh, these are jewels. There you go. This is the slipcover for the John Carter of Mars books. And this is all very high quality. I'm very impressed with what Modifius puts out. A couple of my friends said that the Conan game is the one that I really should have gotten into more so than John Carter of Mars. Especially since I'm not a huge fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs. I think his writing is kind of frozen in time. But, I don't know. I've liked what I've read out of it, and I thought it was a pretty good game all in all. And I don't think I have to really feel, bound by his world building. I can definitely make it a Mars of my own creation. From my wife, I got a couple of these massive immersive battle maps. These are all these cool dry erase boards with all these different scenarios that I can just whip out and lay down. I got 2 of these books because they can lay end to end for particularly large scenarios and encounters. Things like arenas and stuff like that. These are another thing that I can take with me to a public game or a con, pull this out and make everybody go, ooh, because we love showing off in these things. We love it. We love to be the person that everybody goes by the table and goes, that's cool. You know you win then. This is really where I'm going to have to make hay, down here in the... I don't know when I'm going to be able to run this stuff. These bookends, the gargoyles, I got 2 of them. I got these from my grandmother after she passed. It's one of the few things I have to remember her by. So, they're special to me. if you're curious, you do sometimes see them as a bookend in my videos and decoration because they're awesome. To this day, that wasn't really an aesthetic she really clung to, so I don't know why she had those. But she did, and I'm like, well, that's the thing that I want. And they let me have it because nobody else in the family knew anything about them. So, maybe a little morbid, but... Again, my friend basically gave me this book. These books are enormous. And again, huge lore dumps for these. So it's not bad reading for anybody who wants to get into the Warhammer games and to understand the lore from the perspectives of all the different factions. This is which edition? Does it say? It should say somewhere on here, right? I don't know. Those of you who are into the game know which edition this is. I don't have my glasses on right now, but he gave this to me for lore, so I could run Warhammer games and have it be something he can recognize as somebody who loved Warhammer himself. I've since become rather, conversant in the Warhammer lore, and my son has been devouring that information too. He's 15, and he knows an awful lot about the Warhammer universe, especially the weapons, because he loves weapons. The Rune Quest core book, Chaosium reprint. I'm guessing this is a lighter version because I've seen a deluxe version that looks pretty cool. I got this because I want to review one of the classic role-playing games that came out that wasn't Dungeons & Dragons. We'll get to that at some point. Also, Torchbearer. I got this at a scratch and dent sale. It was inexpensive and looked pretty cool. I think, again, this has elements of old-school gaming in it. And maybe one that I am very interested in pulling out and springing on my players. We'll see, but I'm excited about the possibilities of all of these games. So I will be unburying these to a certain extent in the very near future. This is my passion project at some point in the very near future, which is Delta Green. This box with the slipcover I bought from somebody. This has the Agent's Handbook and the Handler's Guide, the Player's Handbook and the GM's book. Delta Green is called Cthulhu, but instead of just being a professor or something, you're actually a government agent who can fight back. And you do against a lot of cosmic and supernatural horrors. You watch your character, although with every success, every time you save humanity from another thing, and if you fail, then the agency has to deal with it through extreme measures. That's when terrorist attacks happen, or a meltdown occurs, something like that. Well, you watch your character, also their sanity and their life just whittle away as a sacrifice for saving the rest of humanity. Kind of interesting. I do look forward to running this at some point. Cyberpunk 2020. This is also in a scratch and dent sale. Second edition. I already had a player express interest in running it. He knows I have it. He'd like to play it. I have no problem with that. So I see us playing that in the near future. We have Dungeon Crawl Classics scratch-off character sheets. Dungeon Crawl Classics is a game, and these are all 0 level, suitable for funnels. I'm not a huge fan of the idea behind Dungeon Crawl Classics. I think it's D&D that they made more complicated. But I have collected their free adventure packs that they've done from Free RPG Day. I have their quick start rules also from that. It's fine if that's the game that you've got and you like. I just think they made it more complicated than it needs to be, with things like rolling on tables every time you cast a spell and things like that. A lot of the things look kind of ticky-tacky when there's already a smoother and easier way to play the game. And its use of all the crazy dice, 14-sided dice and 18-sided dice and 22-sided dice and stuff. I'm all for dice. I love dice. But when I have a hard time telling which dice I have because there's too many wacky dice, I don't know. I think there's a point you can go to, and I think that one pushes it. This one's a special one. Leaves of Chiaroscura, which was written by my friend Megan Bennett Burks. I gave her a little bit of advice when she was writing it. She was nice enough to show me her manuscript, and I offered her editing advice. And then she printed it, and she didn't use all of my advice. The book is is quite good. It's for Fate, though. I had to learn Fate in order to help her with this. Fate's not my cup of tea. I'm just going to say it. It's okay for what it is, but it's not the way I prefer to play. So it was an interesting experiment learning that with her and everything, but hopefully she sold a bunch of it. I don't think she did. It's a niche in a niche. The Leaves of Chiaroscuro is an alternate Earth in the Renaissance around Italy, but you have all of these near humans that are everywhere. It's different. I liked it. I like different, though. So she sold me on the potential for it, and I wanted to see her do as well as she could with it, which is why I offered her free advice. The same kind of free advice I offer to any of my friends who are interested in doing something. Take it or not.